Welcome to Lisbon, the Portuguese capital. Hi there, it's time for Vlog 11 in the Trip 2019 series that I'm doing at the moment, reminiscing about the trip that I took October, November, December last year. And we're at Vlog 11, as I said, which means we're getting closer to the end, very close to the end now. Today we are going to Lisbon, which is of course the Portuguese capital. We start back on the 2nd of December back in Seville, and we took the taxi out to the Seville airport to catch Ryanair, a 7:25 a.m. flight to Seville. So we actually, from Seville to Lisbon I should say, and obviously we took off in pitch darkness, and as we flew across the sun came up. It was an hour or so flight. Entry down to Lisbon, you actually go you fly straight across Lisbon. You can see the amazing 25th of April bridge and everything else as you cross over and land at Lisbon airport. It's stunning. We were Airbnb-ing it in Lisbon, and before we had a chance to actually check in, we went to the Castello de Jorge, the castle of George's castle, which is up on the top of a hill, and it's an old castle. It's partially restored, and you get a wonderful view of Lisbon, the city that we'd arrived in. Lisbon is a city famous for its public transport, and I certainly tried a number of different methods of getting around the town. Their tram network is actually really good. It's one of the most popular ways of getting around. The subway is not too bad, but it's not as extensive as the tram network, and the most popular tram is without a doubt the number 28 tram. You've got to watch out for yourself because of pickpockets on that tram. I actually saw a attempted pickpocketing incident while I was there on the tram, but it takes you up the St George Castle Hill, and it takes you around Lisbon, and it's basically the tourist tram. It's cram-packed with tourists who stand waiting for it to arrive and then pile on and grab all the seats, and so the locals generally take the bus up the hill. There's sort of a replacement bus as well that runs because of all the goddamn tourists, I guess. The interesting ways of getting about and around in Lisbon include the Santa Justa elevator, which goes from sort of, there's a hill, a big hill in Lisbon, and it goes up the hill, takes you up the hill. It's just quite a large hill. It's just quite a large, almost posh, wooden interior elevator, which you can pay for. There's also a Lisbon card which includes, I think, a ride on that you can get while you're in Lisbon. Also includes entry to a lot of other stuff, also really worthwhile. We have to go this way, do we? This is the entrance. And then there are a number, I think there are 3 of them, these separate sort of trams that are sort of cableway trams, a little San Francisco in their own way, I guess. And they go up and down steep hills. One of the popular areas, which is part of Lisbon, I guess, part of Greater Lisbon, you need to take the 15A tram to get there, is a little spot called Belem, and there's this amazing tower out there which you know, was used as an early warning centre many centuries ago now, and also I think it doubled as a prison at one point. That's really beautiful. And there's also the St. Jerome, or the Geronimo Monastery, which is another stunning site out of Belem. So if you are heading to Lisbon, be sure to catch Belem, because there's a lot of nice things. There's a great bakery also, and it's sort of, you go past the 25th of April bridge and you get out there and you see some amazing stuff. The 25th of April bridge itself is a tourist attraction, and you can actually, there is the 25th of April bridge experience, and you go into one of the pylons on the bridge, on the main Lisbon side of the bridge, and there's a little museum thing there, and then you go up in a lift and you stand on glass floors if you're brave enough. I barely spent any time out on there. I got off there as quickly as possible. But that's pretty impressive. And as the sun goes down, it's not a bad place in Lisbon to be at all. One place that a lot of visitors to Lisbon go is to Sintra. It's not that far away. We did it on a day trip. We had a driver for the day, and there were 3 of us in the vehicle, though he could have taken a couple more. And we headed out early morning to Sintra, which is a little town in the mountains. It's really, really beautiful there. And what you find in Sintra is a number of castles. The first castle, or palace, if you prefer, that we visited was the Palacio Nacional de Sintra, which is, I guess it's got a bit of a Moorish feel. It's got a bit of Islamic influence on the architecture, and there's lots of tiling, and there's a beautiful dome there. And that's in the Sintra township proper, which is quite a pretty little township. But it's not the biggest palace. That would be Pena Palace. And it's up the top of a hill/mountain, and we drove most of the way up there, and then you take a bus to the very top for €3, and it's a really, really beautiful castle. When we got there, they had a state visit from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and we all had to stop when we got off the bus and let his cavalcade through, which is probably what you're looking at right now, and there were lots of Secret Service people around. I was a bit naughty when we eventually did go into the castle because we had to wait a bit to let that party in, and I videoed it on my action camera. I didn't get a lot of great shots, but I got a little bit for you there. But they said that photographs weren't allowed, so you know, I suppose that I could claim stupidity on a slight technicality, but I'm sure that I wasn't supposed to do what I did. Anyways, I did it to provide you some footage. When we left the palace, I still had my camera on, and I headed to the balcony, a sort of balcony area to try and sort of sweep across the valley so you could get a shot across the valley. And I was stopped by security, and little did I realise, but there was Benjamin Netanyahu sitting on a bench, just chilling. And I apologised and I rushed off. But if you have a close look, you can see the Israeli Prime Minister in this footage. No, it's a special edit. Sorry, I did that. On our way back, we stopped at a couple of places, the first being the Cabo de Roca, which apparently is the westernmost point of Europe, mainland Europe. And there is a bit of a monument there, and you know, there are cliffs below where the waves are crashing into Europe. It's actually quite a beautiful little area. It's not about a big box. There are different versions on the internet.
This day 26 and the first of the year, I'm too much drunk to.
You're not taking tours?
No.
Lisbon is an awesome city, and one of the arts that Lisbon is famous for is FADO music. And if you get a chance, I went to a recital. Mostly for tourists. You got a free glass of wine and some cured meat and bickies and cheese, and you got to listen to a FADO performance that went for about an hour, and it wasn't too expensive and it was worthwhile, so I thoroughly recommend that if you're in Lisbon. Next you'll find me heading to Porto in Portugal, which is basically my last stop on the tour. So I want to thank you again for joining me today. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Don't forget that on my blog you can find heaps of content, travel related content that you might find interesting. You know, there's stuff on Portugal and Lisbon there too, of course. And of course, you know, if you found this video interesting, you might find some of my other videos interesting. So have a look at my channel. I want to thank you again for popping by, and may the journey never end.